I am going to formally begin. And Richard, you can shut everyone else down. And welcome to our Hope Agenda, Hope in the Apocalypse webinar. I think this is number 5, or it might be number 6, I've forgotten. But all of them are now available on the St Paul's website, which we've circulated, and it's getting quite a few hits. And we're getting good feedback from people who haven't been able to watch it at this time, but we'll stick with Thursdays at 5 o'clock, apart from next week when I can't. I'm in an all-day seminar with a state government exercise, so please forgive me, but I can't do it next Thursday. Following Thursday, we will have something special. Today's theme is about how we can make a difference, bring some change to the world in a constructive and particularly climate sensitive way, using business, how the private sector can lead us into a better future. And we've had lots of other inputs in different perspectives, but today we've got Vanessa and Julian, who are entrepreneurs from Fremantle, and both of them are underway in their new businesses, and you'll hear all about that. This is Vanessa from the newspaper this week. It was in the business section. Sorry, we've got a few overseas people who wouldn't get the West Australian watching. So for your sake, it was on page 45 in the West.
We're going to show this part.
Oh, yeah.
This is the heading.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
And impact on real change is what we're on about. So I'll start with Vanessa, but just to introduce both of you. If you're very clever, you'd see there's a bicycle in the background, and that's Julian's. That's Julian's beautiful bicycle that my chair's in the way. So you should have brought a bright yellow one. It's camouflage. Anyway, sit down.
My masculine one.
We're not actually trying to sell bikes on this show today.
Always, this is business for you.
Yeah. So Vanessa is the CEO of Climate Clever, and this is based in Fremantle, but started working in schools. She's had a session on the ABC Kids channel about that schoolwork, and it's coming up with a new section that's going to be with Mr. Rucastle. What's his name?
Craig Rucastle.
Craig Rucastle, the guy from War on Waste. And that will be featuring Vanessa at some point. And so Vanessa did her PhD with us at CUSP, and has now been 2 years or so working on this project.
This is actually 12 months out
12
of,
months,
yeah, so
okay.
10 years in academia and 1 year as entrepreneur.
And we'll come back to Julian in a moment, but let's start by asking Vanessa about her project. How did it happen, and how did you become an entrepreneur after being an academic?
Well, thanks for first of all, hi everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to chat to you all tonight. Peter was definitely the instigator for how and why I became an entrepreneur. I'm a great entrepreneur, isn't it?
It
was actually Peter who asked myself and my friend and colleague at the time, like when we were doing our PhDs 8 years ago, Samantha Hall, Peter asked us if we would help a local high school to become carbon neutral. That school had already...
You're in Freo, you can say. South Freo.
South Freo, which is now Fremantle College.
Yeah.
They had the ambition, they wanted to go carbon neutral. Peter had been working with the school for a long time, and we were sort of the icing on the cake when we came along, and we were carbon nerds. So Peter said, why don't you guys actually do the carbon accounting and get them certified? So we did that in 2012. They became the first carbon neutral school in Australia. And that sort of inspired me to try and pursue some form of platform or program to help more schools across Australia achieve that ambitious aim of carbon neutrality. And right from the start, I had this glorious idea about an online platform, but it took about 8 years to get to actually building the platform. And that's absolutely the entrepreneurial process. But I was very fortunate to have all those opportunities during my career as an academic to be doing research and pilots in this space. And also Curtin University offered a whole bunch of entrepreneurial programs, which I very excitedly took up and did everything. You did Ignition as well, didn't you?
Yep.
Yeah. So the Ignition was a 5-day incubator program. I did Accelerate with Sam. And that was a 3-month program. We've won 2 Curtin Innovation Awards. So that all gave me a whole bunch of entrepreneurial tips and advice and skills. Yeah, and so always had this sort of side hustle, as a lot of entrepreneurs have, alongside their full-time job.
But what was driving you to go in that direction?
Just the desire to want to have the biggest impact that we could have. And I think doing my PhD, which was around decarbonising cities, and I was specifically looking at urban development, when I was looking at the school sector, I was thinking, while schools don't have, aren't responsible for that many emissions, this idea of getting into the brains and the minds of these school children and getting them to take that knowledge home and educate and upskill their parents and pester them about, how to be more efficient or to get solar on the roof or to do this or to do that. I thought, well, that could actually create a whole lot of change in the community. So that was really what drove me all that time. And while it's taken us this long to actually launch our home version of our Climate Clever app, now we can actually track that intergenerational change, which we had always hypothesized might happen. We can now actually demonstrate if that is happening as we start to get the kids to use the home app at home and link all that data back to the school.
So you better tell us what it does.
Yeah, that's true. So we've created an app that helps schools and our homes, and hopefully soon, maybe in the next 9 to 12 months, we'll be releasing a small business version. The app helps them to calculate and measure their carbon footprint, audit buildings, so audit your home of different resource consuming appliances like lights and computers and air conditioners and heaters and taps and toilets and everything. And then it provides an action plan, so you can choose from a whole range of actions across electricity, gas, water, waste, trees, gardens, transport, even changing your bank account and changing a superannuation fund. So all sorts of things to help you reduce your carbon footprint. And a lot of them are they're in the from no cost all the way through to sort of more expensive retrofits and upgrades. So it's trying to provide people with that a strategic approach to implementing things in their everyday life, because sometimes it can be very overwhelming. Like you want to do something, but you just don't know where to start, and that's what we're trying to help. And then it has all the analytics and graphs, so you can actually see what impact you're having.
And does it work?
Yes. Well, actually, one of our, the home one we've only launched 2 months ago, so we're still gathering the data on that one. But with the schools one, we've been going for about 3 years, and most recently we were very excited with this. Oh, maybe I'm not supposed to say that. Recently we saved a school in 3 months. They saved 30% off their electricity, gas and water.
Wow.
And that was all from no cost action. So just making sure their air conditioners were set to the right temperature, doing really big switch off campaigns before school holidays, so changing behaviours. It was about $5,000 they saved. It was a relatively small school, but for some schools, $5,000 might be the whole library budget, for the year. So they were stoked. And when you think about 30%, and then you times that across any, whether it's your home business or a big school, that could be $30,000. Yeah,
it's a lot of money to save at a time when there's a lot of people at home, but not at work. It's got a real place. So how's the app going for the home?
Yeah, so we're getting really good take-up. We've actually launched a local government partnership program, and that's going really well because local governments are often, actually my PhD and a lot of the work that we've done together, Peter, over the years has really demonstrated that in terms of tackling climate change, it's going to happen at the local level. We've seen time and again how hard it is at the global level to all these global negotiations, but you know, where we are seeing real action is on the ground in our communities, and you know, and that local government level is the level that's closest to the community, can actually implement change from one day to the next, doesn't have to go through, you know, years of policy change at sort of the state or the federal level. So we feel like we've hit a real niche spot with these local governments, because they are often implementing sustainability programs, but they really struggle to measure them. So a classic example is many councils offer home energy audits, and they send a person out to a home. They'll go around and do an audit like we do in our app, but they do it sort of on paper, and then they give the householder that piece of paper and, you know, say, these are the recommendations, you should do that. But then they never follow up, and they never know how did that household actually implement it, did they save anything? And so it's really hard to measure the success of the programs that they do. So they've been loving our app, because we aggregate all that data up and we give it back to them, so they can very easily tick off their KPIs around, you know, because a lot of councils are declaring a climate emergency, and now they're looking for ways that they can actually, what actions they can put in place in their community, and that, you know, to measure how they're reaching those targets, because that's the critical part. Hey, we can all say we want to do this, but if we don't know, if we're not, we can't manage what we don't measure.
There was one other feature that I find a little hard to understand, but somehow in a local area, the app will learn from all the others in that local area about what is best for them. Tell me how that works.
So it's actually what we're calling a peer learning platform, and I'm sure many of you have heard of this term citizen science. So we sort of use a citizen science approach. So that the action plan, at the moment, there's hundreds of actions in there that we've learned from our research over the years and what people have done. But if you were looking through that action list yourself, and you thought, oh, I really want to do this particular action, and it's not in the list, you can create that action from scratch, and you give it a title and you give it a little description, and you set your due date and everything. But then once you've come to implement it, it always asks for a you know, completion report, which takes 2 minutes, and it just says, great, how much did that action cost? How easy was it to implement on a rating scale 1 to 5? Would you recommend it to others on a rating scale 1 to 5? Were there any barriers you faced, you know, technical, financial, policy, and what tips and advice would you give to others trying to implement this action? And then we're using machine learning and data science in the back end of the app, and if it meets a certain amount of parameters, then it will say, yep, this is a successful initiative, and it gets added into our list of actions. So our action list is constantly growing from the community, and you can learn from other people. And the great thing is means we don't have to constantly be going, what other actions can we put? People actually, you know, doing the thing that they do best, which is be creative and find new solutions. And you know, a new lighting technology might come out, and Julian's an early adopter, so he'll go and put it in his house. Actually, my partner's just gone and put the LED lights which are connected to Siri, so he's constantly going, hey Siri, turn on the bedroom lights, or turn on the lounge room lights, make them purple, make them green. So, you know, there'll be a new technology, someone will try it out, it'll be successful, and it'll get added to the list.
Okay, so we had a Four Corners report not long ago about artificial intelligence, which is machine learning, and it was pretty scary. It was all about how the world is now looking at us and taking pictures of us the whole time and learning from us, and going to swoop and do all kinds of nasty things. It was a bit anti-China, I think, but it also made the impression that this technology is bad. But what you're saying is you could turn it to a very good function.
Absolutely. Oh, artificial intelligence can certainly be used for good. I think we all need to be very careful about privacy and security. Always be very diligent about all of that. But yeah, there's absolute breakthroughs happening because of the computer can learn things so much quicker than we can. It can also be used for very bad things, like finding better oil deposits and you know, hard to reach places. I think Google's been looking. I think actually some of those big companies are starting to pull away and say, we're not going to. They're realizing where they draw the line of that's not a good use of technology.
Well, that's certainly a key theme of what we've been talking about in the Hope area. You've got to find the right technologies for helping to fix things, but you've got to actually make sure they're chosen rather than the negative ones that are associated with the same technology. Anyway, you have a pretty smart system there, and what we'll do is come back and talk a little bit more about the personal journey you've been on with that. But let me just have a quick chat to Julian, and maybe you could even walk us over the bike. I don't mind carrying this over there and showing people, but just tell us about it first.
Yeah.
All right, go for it. Tell
the
us.
bike itself. That's
Yeah, go.
I mean, I guess our key thing was we started the whole journey, a bit like what you were talking about. You know, how do we end up where we are? I was completely frustrated with the sort of regular bike, where there was all these challenges you had to face to basically use it for everyday transport. So if you went out at night, you've got to find your lights, you've got to make sure they're charged. Then when you're out at the pub or whatever, dinner, you've got them in your pocket or you've got them somewhere. And then
you leave them on the bike and they get
leave
stolen.
them on the bike, get stolen.
Yeah.
So, oh, that's a painful thing. And then when you're riding down there, you've got your pants tucked in your socks so you don't get grease on your pants or get them caught. And then a lot of women have said to me, you know, then you get your dress caught in the chain. And then, you know, going out on a date for the first time, do you take, you know, it needs to be a bit stylish and look the part, or you don't ride, you know. So how many people have ridden out on a date unless you're really committed? You know? And then you say, all right, I'm on the way home from work, I want to pick some stuff up from the shops. And then, oh, did I have carriers on the bike? And it just goes on and on and on. If you actually look at a bike, it's an annoying thing to use every day. So it's much easier to grab the car keys and jump in the car and just whiz down the shops or whatever. So the whole bike, really, I mean, we could go through it, but I can explain the whole thinking behind it was, how do you create a product that gets rid of all those barriers to using a bike for everyday transport? And we actually didn't even set out to build an electric bike. We set out to build a bike that I guess people would want to use every day. And someone, you know, the research clearly shows that many more people will use bikes if they're electric. Now, we were quite committed to making sure that they still gave you exercise. So we've used a power assist, which is the most common now anyway, but we've taken the throttle off. So you do have to do some exercise. And again, the research shows that because people use it 20 or so times more than their regular bike, they actually get more exercise anyway. So all the research at the beginning, the customer was what determined the features. So another one, as you know, Peter, is, you know, people don't take their electric bikes because they're expensive, because they're worried about them getting stolen. So then we have like Peter's was stolen from out the back. So then we did a whole bunch of research. So what are the best ways of stopping that? And it turns out that some sort of alarm, some sort of GPS tracking, and some sort of inbuilt physical lock is the way you sort of prevent things stolen. So, you know, you've got to, then we built all that in. So the last 4 years has really been design and engineering and raising money and testing all the features. And that's really, you know, it takes that much time. The actual design work is probably 1.5 to 2 years, but the actual raising money in between to keep going, you know, we've raised over $2.5 million now to keep going. And that all just takes time. So
Yeah.
That's
now,
the tough slog.
that's the tough slog. So you've got to start and then build your team up, and then you've got to sort of have some team that can come on and then disappear for a bit and come back on again. And,
You actually made this in a garage in Fremantle.
so yeah, we still operate out of the house, quite a secret location, but
Hampton Road.
it used to be.
Okay.
You don't know the new one.
No, okay.
But yeah, the prototypes have all been built in our sort of prototype workshop, and it's pretty good. I mean, we have a lot of contractors outside, so you know we're generating local jobs, but there's lots of people outside that build stuff and then bring it in, we put it together. But yeah, building 7, 8 now bikes in that workshop. Peter's ridden one. I think you may have had a little.
I don't think I've had a ride yet.
Well,
I'm very
behind us.
excited to.
So that's prototype 3. Then we've had prototype 4, and now the team is working flat out on basically turning a prototype level design into mass production level. And that's just, you know, the angle of this is not sharp enough. It won't come out of the mold quick enough. So you need to change that. But then when you change that, something else needs to change. So there's a bit of a jigsaw puzzle type changes going on. So there's a team of 5, 6 of us. We're sort of back up to a full engineering team. Not really selling bikes at the moment, but we've got 200 pre-orders to sort of deliver straight away. And then we've got the only barrier we've got at the moment is got to raise a bit more money towards the end of the year to turn the production line on. So that's our next sort of challenge. But we want to get like literally today we've signed off our sort of moulding company, our painting company, our welding and heat treating company for the frame, which is the major, you know, what we're doing on the frame has never been done before. So that's been a big challenge to actually get people. And when you go to, we are building in China, people are probably wondering, when you go there, there's often like, oh no, you can't do that. This is how you build a bike frame. You're like, no, we're not. This is what we want to do. And you've got to slowly bring them along with you to get them to.
So there's a lot of innovations in there. Can you tell us what is a world first about it? What is actually really new?
Well, the frame is very new, but what we would say is there's a whole bunch of, I'll tell you about some new stuff, but it's the fact that it's all in one bike is actually what sets this apart. So having a monocoque frame, which means there's no tubes inside it, it's all carried by the skin that you see. And that's a kind of world first doing it the way we're doing it. There's one other in the world somewhere, I think, but you know, and doing it in aluminium, no one's ever done that. Then there's little things like there's a cable that comes out the back of the bike and plugs in, and you wrap that around a pole or whatever, and that locks in alarm and GPS tracking. That's all linked to that. So the whole thing's integrated. It's not normally if you wanted to build a bike with some of these features, you'd go over here and you'd buy a GPS tracking system off this company, and then you'd go over here and buy a lock off someone else, and go over here and buy something else, and you put it on your bike. It looks terrible because it's all bolted on. It's not made for it, and they don't work together. There'll be an app for this bit and an app for that bit, and ours is seamless. It all just works together. So that's
show them.
Definitely time to look at it, isn't it? We'll just have a quick look here. This is a world first for Hope and Apocalypse.
That's better.
Yeah, that's better. All right. Now,
There you go.
can you all see it? Yeah. It is.
Even the helmet matches.
Yeah.
You don't have a good helmet, but
So just turn it on.
yeah, so the electronics, I mean, this is still the prototype. We've made a few minor changes, but it turns on, the display is built into the bike. It talks to you. So that's a world first. You know, she's not going to talk now. Hang on. So instead of having beeps and bops like some things do, it actually talks to you, and you control your lights. It's got a phone you can put here, and it'll actually show you all the speed and all that kind of stuff. But much like a Tesla, you don't actually have to. You don't have to have your phone attached to it, but it has a screen that's variable. Got a belt drive on it, so
Yeah, that's what you don't get caught in, right?
Yep. So you don't get caught in that. There is a belt guard on the normal ones. This is still prototype level, but that basically doesn't have any maintenance either. So that's the other thing. You want to buy a bike and not have to keep maintaining it every week, and that's a big thing.
So does that mean there's no grease?
No grease.
No grease. Grease-free completely. This is the cable. So you pull that out of there, plug it into the bike, and then that's how you lock it up. And then you'd press this button. So then it talks to you, tell you, okay, walk away. There's a light flashing on the dash, and you can walk away. And now it would talk to my phone.
I'm going to steal this bike.
Is
So
it going to go? Is it going to?
it could keep.
She starts screaming at me.
It'll
eventually.
start screaming in a minute, and then it'll send a message to my phone, and then I can go and see that someone's playing with my bike. So basically, you park it, go wherever you want. You don't think about it. You just, as long as you don't see a message on your phone, you'll know your bike will be there, and that's a completely rare experience for a nice product like this.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the other things, the battery comes out the other side, so that's removable in case you want to charge it. There's a storage locker in what we call the Roadster X, which is the sort of top model, and that's got a so that is a world first actually. If you're asking about those, see if she'll probably screen in a minute. Whoops. So inside that, this doesn't open on this model, but the ones we're just finishing design of now, inside there is a canister to blow your tyre up, and also a rain poncho. So you can't get caught out in the rain, and if you get a flat tyre, then you can just pump up your tyre up with the press of a button. It doesn't have a pump. Removable rear carriers, so you can click on and click off different things. If you've got kids, you can click them off and put a box on, take that off, click your baby carrier on, take that off. Again, that's a world first. We've never seen that before. The double stand, I mean, have a look at this. This is a fantastic bit of So everyone wants a double stand, but normally they're a big ugly thing, and this one just disappears up into the bike frame. So I'll just turn her off.
Yeah, she's screaming at you.
So
is that a code?
All right.
yeah, so I just put a code in there, and then it just disarms it. So, and all that, as I said, there's bikes with double stands, but not like that one.
Wow.
Very good.
I don't know how good that
All
was for.
Well, I just want to show that.
Oh, hang on a second.
Yeah, no, I'll just sit down here. What you can do if you want to do something useful, and this was done in Fremantle. So a nice little local product, and something that we ought to be proud of. Not everyone will buy one of these, but it's
Most people will.
Yeah. Can we ask how much they retail for? I'm sure that's what everyone's wanting to know.
We're actually changing the price now because everyone keeps coming to us and say we've had them too cheap. So I think actually if you pre-order them now, they're about 4,500 for the top model and about 4,200 for the Air, which are called the Roadster X and the Roadster Air. So there's a few lighter. It's a bit lighter the Air. Some people want. We've got a massive battery capacity, so we've trimmed it down a bit for people that are just doing shorter trips. So,
And do you plug it in like a Tesla? You just plug it into a wall, or do you have to take the battery out?
no, you can do both. You can leave it on there, or you can take it out. So.
okay. So I'm sure there'll be lots of other people wanting to ask questions, but what I would like to do now, oops.
Check his emails.
No, I didn't want to do that. We do have a chat column here, and what about a three-wheeler one for people with no balance?
Well, great suggestion. The next product we're planning is actually, this one's called the Roadster. The next one might be called the Loadster, which is actually a three-wheeler, 3 wheels on the front. And if anyone has travelled to, especially Scandinavian countries, very common is to have that 2 wheels on the front so it doesn't tip over, but you can actually put kids, dogs, bigger load, a bit more shopping in there. So that's the next product at this point.
Good.
We're moving through, we want to have a suite. So we might go down to a scooter, to a sort of, because a lot of people have one of these, then they have one child and they still have one of these. Yeah. And then the next minute they've got 2 kids and they're like, all right, I can't really take 2 kids on one bike. Well, you got to be pretty committed. So then they go to the 3 wheelers.
Okay, and Jane Bryant says, I love that she has an Australian accent, Julian.
That's right.
I noticed that as well. That's very cool.
There was a local girl who did these recordings, and little she know that they're going across the world.
Well, it's a bit like Siri. She was Australian, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're talking about the Christiania bike.
That's right.
And
does
it have gearing, says Jen?
So, interesting about that, it had 8 speeds, the first prototype we did. And then what you find is you're only using gear 5, 6 and 7, I think it is, because when you've got the electrics, you don't need to go right down to the bottom gears. So now we've gone back to a 3-speed just to simplify it. And now it's a 3-speed gearing machine. Yeah.
The thing I liked about the alarm as well is just even having her voice going, if you want to move me, turn off my alarm.
Yeah,
like
right.
That's probably enough for most people to go, oh crap, I've run away.
Well, especially down at the bike place, it happens in Freo sometimes. People bump it because they're trying to park their bike. You don't want it to go off, but you want them to know that there is something going on.
If they are thinking about maybe stealing it.
Well, yeah. It's friendly until it's not.
Yeah. Okay. What is the battery capacity?
So we're not the biggest in the world now, but we were until a month or 2 ago. But it's around 20 amp hours. That doesn't mean much to people, but this will do 80+ kilometres on full power. So we've tested that, road tested it, not just stated it. That's massive for a bike.
That'd cover me for a month.
Yeah. And that's the thing, you don't have to charge it very often because you're using that. And the batteries that the manufacturer is now contemplating, it'll probably do 90. So we'd like to hit the 100k mark at some point, but who rides 100k's a day on a bike anyway? So there's sort of like, you've got to balance weight with batteries.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so we've got a couple of entrepreneurs here who've put a lot of time and effort. I've been able to watch both of them from the start of their ventures, and it really is quite something to see how they take on a challenge like this. and the brain power, but also the time and the effort and the depression to overcome, as well as all the people who say, oh, you can't do that. So it's a constant process of claiming a different future that you think you can make. And that's what, she's still talking to us in the back there. I'll ask her what she defines as hope. I define hope somewhere around that, you know, to actually wanting to create a future and knowing they can do it, but constantly having to work at that in so many ways. So tell me how it happens for you. How do you get out of the bed every day to do this when it's not going well?
Well, I'm sure Julian can attest as well that entrepreneurship in general is such a roller coaster. Like you literally have such highs and then mega lows constantly. So it certainly does take a certain type of personality and probably resilience to be able to ride that, because it's just constantly ebb and flow. But I think the great thing about doing something, and in that article that we're talking about social enterprises, which is sort of exactly what we're doing, something that's, you know, is having an impact. That's what drives you. Like it's you know that it's enough, even when you have your low days, it's enough to get you up and go, I've just got to keep trying, because if not me, then who is going to do this? And I have a lot of you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember when before I started this, you know, we were talking, I used to work with kids, and one of the things we used to, you know, kids are, oh, what am I going to do with my life? And even adults, you know, start to ask those questions when they're a bit lost. And I remember the sort of answer seemed to be, well, find a problem in the world that really upsets you, and then look at what skills and, you know, skills you've got and things you could get passionate about, and then put the two together. And, you know, as you know, I've done something a bit like what you're doing with Days of Change and whatever. So I'd say I'm kind of entrepreneurial and can grasp things and pull them together. And it really upsets me that we're sort of treating the planet the way we are. So put those two together, and that's what sort of drives me out of bed in the morning. But I'll also say, like, we've built a massive following and a team that, you know, I feel like there's this buoyancy that even when I'm a bit tired or when I'm not sort of loving getting out of bed one morning, and I'll be honest, it's not often that I feel that way at all, but it's just, you know, you've got other people to ask questions and support you. And because what we're doing has a very clear why, a very, like, a make a difference why, all the people on the journey get that, and it's like a buoyancy that's sort of been driven along. And in a way, I also, as you were talking, I was thinking the only times you ever think about, you know, never think about quitting, but where you're feeling a bit, you just know that it's your own personal issues you've just got to get over. There's actually, the project for me has never shown this is not going to work. It's more been my own self-doubt, if I ever have that. So, and you look back and you go, well, we've come this far and been successful, we'll just keep going. And then when you listen to podcasts, I do a lot of listening to podcasts from other entrepreneurs. And I remember one said that, you know, most projects stop because people give up, not because they don't, they're not a good idea. You know, normally you pivot slowly until you get to the version that'll work. The people don't have the faith in themselves. So that's kind of what keeps me going.
I also love podcasts. Also love reading, listening to audiobooks. And one I'm listening to at the moment is called The Messy Middle, and it's very much for those entrepreneurs that are, you know, you often hear about them at the, you know, as they're launching something, or at the end when they've been acquired and they're being sold for billions of dollars. In between. But that often is like 7 to 10 years in between, which is that hard slog which you don't hear about. And so this book's been really inspiring, and it's, you know, really giving lots of tips and advice on how you get through that messy middle, and that part where you're pushing and you feel like you're not getting anywhere, or you're having those really tough days. But, you know, it's all about celebrating those little wins along the way, because that's sometimes all that you've got, especially if you've got a team. You know, you've got to celebrate that weekly little success. Oh, you got that light thing right, that's amazing. You know, it's only part of the bigger picture. And I mean, I think one of the things I struggle most with our product is technology, and I'm not actually I don't come from a technical background, and I've had to learn just how complicated it is. And you know, we often miss deadlines, and it stresses me out to no end. But realizing that when we do fix those things or release a new feature, that people just love it, and it is that you look back on the journey and go, look how far we've come. We've released a product that is still surprising people, even though I think it's probably part of the entrepreneur's mindset is that, but there's so far still to go. We need to do all this other stuff to get where we are.
We're about to celebrate. I mean, celebrating the wins is a big part of keeping that momentum up, and I think next week the plan is to celebrate cutting the first tool that's for the new bike. So they'll actually start making something that's going to be in the production line. Yeah. So that's a big, this is 4.5 years down the track.
4.5 years, geez.
And this is the thing I don't know enough about software, but I feel like building a hardware product, which is what you'd call this, I can't get that out to customers until it's all done. I can't just keep adding features. It's got to be all done. And
you can't write it with one wheel. Well,
that's right.
You can probably.
So it's a long journey till you get that. I can't wait to see these bikes on the road next year and people riding them around. I'm like, right, I think that's when I'll feel like it's that first we've made it.
Yeah.
So.
Ooh, lots of.
Yeah. We are getting lots of issues here. Paul Poulet, do you want to say what you've said here? Paul's joined us from Sweden. He's also a Frio student type person who's now a lecturer in Sweden, along with Jane and Giles. We've got 2 others from Sweden today. Do you want to say what you just said, or do you want me to read it out?
Oh, no, I don't mind jumping in. Just to celebrate the 2 of you and to say, go you all. And one of the things that I'm aware of is just, it seems like our crop, I'm hearing this story in many different places, our crop of Frio entrepreneur types, we've hit that spot where we're hitting our stride. And I'm just curious about how that's felt for both of you. I mean, you've sort of spoken to that a little bit already, but it was more just an opportunity to celebrate you and to say yay. And I'm resonating with some of the successes and the struggles that I'm dealing with here as well. So we just love to hear how that's been on a more personal level from both of you. And also to just say, Peter, how instrumental you have been for so many of us.
100%.
Really.
So Peter's deflecting that compliment.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course he is.
There's no way I would take 4.5 years to get a new electric bike onto the market. Or to do all that incredible nerdy work that's involved in developing an app that can help change our behaviour by helping us to understand how much energy, water and waste we produce. And, that's pretty amazing stuff. So well done. And they're what I call, they're your little diamonds that you've created. And I've talked about this in the church, but I actually talked about it in a podcast the other day, because the person was very despairing about the future, and she was the one who created this podcast, and it has an enormous following. It's on the built environment, Fifth Estate, and I was just saying how important it was that she had created this world of discussion around the future of cities, and I related it to the last book of the Bible, Revelation, where John is sitting on an island in the Mediterranean looking at everything collapsing around him, and he's looking to the future, and he says there are 2 cities emerging, and one of them is a city of frivolous consumption, just determined to consume everything, and it's dying and it's going to disappear. And the other one is a city made of diamonds, and it has a tree of life and a river of life, but it is made of these jewels and diamonds that fit together. And you say, well, what is that about? And then there's all these philosophers and theologians over the centuries who've interpreted that to mean that that's our human work, because diamonds have to be dug up and refined and then turned into something beautiful with incredible creativity, and then you give it to someone and it lasts for generations. So you are creating a diamond, and that's how the city is built, out of all these diamonds. So we've all got our job to do. I've created a few, I suppose. But,
You've influenced.
But the main thing is that you generate hope out of creating your diamond, and then you give it to others so that helps make the city work. That's what I think is a very old tradition, which I discovered not that long ago in terms of the what the last book of the Bible is about, and it's part of why our church is running this series on hope, that we hope to see the diamonds of our city emerging. And each time we've interviewed people so far, you can see their little diamonds that they're making. Not so little, some of them. Fiona Stanley's a pretty big one. So that's why we're trying to get behind this. So I need to ask you then, what actually motivates you on that spiritual level as well? Because I asked Josh and Josh Wilson, Josh Byrne, Brad Pettit and Peter Dowding and so on, and they've all got something to say on this level. What do you guys say?
Whew. I guess I feel a very strong, I think I'm a very spiritual person. I feel a very strong affinity to the earth and the planet, and I'm constantly amazed at what an amazing creation we have here, and I just think it's completely our responsibility to make sure that we protect it and that it survives. I find that every time I'm out in nature, that's what it does. It really motivates me to go, this is glorious, it's perfect the way it is, and we can, exactly like that story, we can either it can turn into stones or it can turn into diamonds, and we are so often doing horrible stuff to it.
I grew up Catholic and whatever, so that might have influenced me, but I think the other thing is I grew up partly on a sheep station, and I just had this free reigning ability to just go out in nature. Now, it wasn't a huge amount of childhood, but it was quite influential. And in the PhD I started with you, Peter, that was quite common. People that were motivated for environmental type sort of work generally had some affinity for nature. And I would explain it as a sort of spiritual connection. And, everyone has a different ideas about what spiritual means. But for me, I actually use the word, it's sort of the heart. And in fact, the name tiller comes from this sort of metaphor of sailing your ship or your business, your ship of life or your business, with your heart steering the ship. Which is, for those that don't know, the tiller is the bit you normally hold on the ship when you're sailing. So that actually is what gets me out of bed in the morning, is I feel it's not, I could intellectualize it, but actually there's just this sort of spiritual energy, a calling, if you want to use that word, to actually do something in this. And I think that's part of what, I don't actually live with my mind too far down the track, because if you go as an entrepreneur, one of the skills you got to have is just have faith that you're on the right journey. You're tuning in. I always feel like I'm sort of tuning in and getting and steering it in the right direction, myself and the business. And everything seems to unfold quite well when you're doing that. And you can feel when you're off, you're just like, this is not quite right. It's like a bad relationship. It's just not the right, thing. And that's what I feel. And so I know what's happening in the business. I've got plans, we've got a strategy, but I actually don't know what's going to happen. I mean, COVID-19 is a classic example. The world can change overnight. So I think worrying about too much down the track, it's just, if you tune into what you can do and the bit you can do in that, and think big and play big, because we need playing big, but how it all works and how Peter's work affects me, and then how I might interact with you and all that, we're not going to work that out, but it happens and it unfolds. And that's how I feel we're going to fix, the way we're currently living, is more people being motivated from that place.
I guess building on that, I felt I feel like I don't want to leave this world without having given it my best shot to have a good positive impact. I think that's, for me, the most devastating and scary thing is living an ordinary life, or even contributing to the destruction of it. But, you know, to know that, hey, we've got some big tough challenges ahead of us, but as long as I've done everything I can to have that positive impact and influence, then I'll feel satisfied.
And there is a point you realise, I don't know your exact life, but you make choices, or you start to realise that owning a flash car and a nice house and all this sort of stuff actually doesn't matter. So, I mean, this has cost me significantly financially.
Flash bike?
What's that?
What about a flash bike?
Well, yeah, I mean,
that doesn't matter.
I would call it like it's a product that's going to add to your life, but you don't want to own it to just own it. You're owning it because of the value it adds to your life. So I now ride this, and my car's done 2,000 kilometres instead of 12 a year. I want to get rid of it, but I'm not owning anything for this sort of the wrong reasons, you know. And this has cost me significantly to do this. So I haven't had a lot of income, and I was like, I remember the moment, it was like start of 2016, and I thought, if I'm going to do this, I've got to throw my job in, and I'm not going to have any money for a while. I was just spending savings, and everything started to, you know, you go out for dinner and, you know, everyone's just splashing $50 out, and you're like, I think I can afford 15 or something. But I just realised that actually what's important to me is exactly what you're saying. It's making a difference, doing something meaningful with my life, and what I would have spent that money on, most of it is not important. So I don't actually need a massive income to have all that stuff. And that, as an entrepreneur, a startup entrepreneur for sure, I think you got to realise that you're not going to have, you know, wads of cash for a period of time. You're just going to have to sort of sacrifice. But the other side, to be honest, is, you know, our business is worth a lot of money now, so you might have quite a bit down the track. And I hope to, because I'd like to do wonderful things with that and be able to support the next Vanessa, like in 10 years' time, sort of thing, you know.
I think that's certainly what a lot of entrepreneurs aspire to, is to give back.
Well, you realise how much you've been given to get here. You're like, the amount of people that have bought me wine and dinner and all this kind of stuff over the years. I mean, our board, amazing people that get paid huge amounts of money to do this elsewhere, have not been paid a cent to be our board for 3.5 years. You know? So, well, there you go. And it takes all that, but I do think they also get a lot out of it too. So,
yeah, I think what you two are both talking about is how you actually can help change people and make their lives better, as well as less impact on the planet. And our others have tended to be more about structural change. Certainly Fiona was, and Peter Downing and Brad, and, you know, the politicians generally, I suppose. Christabel's one was much more about one person after the other, and the deep changes that need to be addressed in some people. So that idea that it could be done through business, and essentially creating an opportunity so that people can make choices that are better in terms of their impact. That's pretty significant, and one that I think that Paul is always pushing us to make sure that behaviour is changing. It's not just a matter of getting the structures right, but structures matter, of course, but that change is what we're all working for. So look, we've got 7 minutes left on the clock here, and I would love it if anyone had a particular question where you can unmute yourself and just jump in and ask a question. Richard, is it possible for people to unmute? And yeah, there's Paul Loring. He's got his hand up. And anyone else got their hand up? I just want a quick look here. No. So there's 20 or so people there. Paul Loring, not Paul Houlet.
Hi, yeah, I posed a couple of questions in the chat, and so one was, or rather comments. So one was about cycling. I've just gone through the process of designing and building my own mountain bike, a titanium one. So I've learned a lot of the sorts of things that Julian was speaking about, but because I did it online with the Chinese, it was basically one sentence at a time, because their difference in times and things like that. It was almost one sentence per day, and to try and resolve issues. So it's quite a difficult process. But actually doing those sorts of things, you don't appreciate, even with something as simple as a bicycle, just how many complexities there are. And so there's a couple more general things about that I discovered, or sort of bumped into, and one is that as a cycling coach, when I've been encouraging kids to commute to school by bike, it's so obvious that there's so many different approaches from the parents to their children about bikes. So one school I went to, one of the young ladies I understand, I'm just getting there. Turned up with a bamboo bike with all the bells and whistles that costs $5,000, and it wasn't electric, but it could have been. And it feels to me like, at primary school age, we really want to encourage kids to actually ride bikes rather than electrically be driven. So I feel there's some sorts of things there that we also need to take into account. And the other thing is that in doing this, it's getting increasingly difficult to get parts and their replacements. So even companies like Shimano now don't supply many parts to places like Australia. So it's getting quite complicated. The other one was, my comment was aimed at Vanessa, in that yesterday, Albanese on the press club, National Press Club, was speaking about his ideas for the future, and was really dismissive of the idea of still pricing carbon, because we now all use sustainable energy, it's limitless, there's no carbon issue associated with it. And it was just completely dismissive. And I thought, we can't just let that go. It isn't just about energy, the choice of the source of energy. It's about the volume of energy and the way we use energy, the necessity for energy. And so I was really just raising that as something that perhaps you need to take on board, Vanessa,
Well, we certainly, that's our number one focus in our platform is reduce your consumption. And then, we of course we encourage people to get solar if they can afford it, or switch to green power if they can. But we 100% is always about, let's reduce as much as we can to start with.
Okay. Do you want to say something about the bikes?
Oh, look, engaging with China is an interesting thing, but we did a lot of work on what's the best way to do it. We've got an amazing, we have a fairly strict criteria in anyone we work with. English isn't a barrier for us with them, because that was part of the criteria of selecting them, so that's fine. And look, you'll always have supply chain issues, Yeah. So you just got to plan and make sure you've got alternatives if you need it. So.
Yep. Okay.
And I don't think any young children will be riding electric bikes, not at that price anyway. This is more of an thing to start.
The thing I'd say is probably, but the thing, I have a push bike, like a pedal one, and I use that for exercise. But there's no way I'm going to ride that into the city in my suit or anything, or even I won't never ride that far. So there's not like we're trying to replace push bikes. This actually makes people ride much more.
This replaces a car.
That's right. Yeah. Replace the cars, exactly.
Okay. Paul Poulet, you got another question?
2 minutes.
I was just to remind folks of a story from 15 years ago, Peter, and you probably remember this. I've told this story before. We were giving a seminar at ISTP, and there was a suit from the, I can't remember which Liberal government it was back then, that had come to one of those seminars and was asking you about how you stay hopeful. And I remember you actually just stopping deadpan in the seminar, looking this guy straight in the eyes, and just said to him, I got to have hope. I've got grandkids. Yeah. And that really stayed with me. And I just thought I'd bring that into the conversation, because it was really a life-changing moment for me, just not only what you said, but how it landed.
Yeah, fair enough. Sustainability is about the next generation, generations to come. And when you have grandchildren, it becomes very personal. It's no longer just a concept. And sure, that's a daily thing with us. So anyone else?
One more question there.
We've got as a question,
Vanessa.
Joanne, to Vanessa. In your experience, do people in suburbia have a good understanding of how their day-to-day lifestyles generate greenhouse gas emissions?
No. No, that's a very clear. No, I think a lot of people don't, and there are a few carbon calculators out there. A lot of them are very sort of assumption based, but no, I think generally people don't understand. And something that our app does is it shows you your breakdown between electricity, gas, water, and waste. And you know, in schools in particular, but also in homes, we do focus a lot on waste, and we should, it's important. But when you look at the actual carbon impact, electricity is so often about 80% of the carbon footprint, and that's if you're not including your flights. As soon as you put your flights in there, that's way higher than anything else. But yeah, no, I think it's a topic that a lot of people need upskilling, and I think you know, there's obviously with all the climate change protests and rallies, people are really wanting action, and I think that we're at a time when they're ready to receive that information about and knowledge about what is my impact and how and what can I do. So I think it's a perfect timing now to educate people.
And the kids come home and say, how much energy do we use?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I should find out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Look, I think we should finish. Ken O'Neill has said to everyone, thank you so much, very inspiring, and I agree. These two are very inspiring, and it's been our pleasure to really enjoy that today, and to see what a couple of locals are doing to make a global contribution. I would look forward to the time when Climate Clever app is the #1 app in Europe and America, and the tiller cycle is used all across the world.
#1.
Why not?
Why not?
And the app promotes buying a tiller ride.
Yes.
So you can reduce your
and calculates how much you reduce.
Yeah.
But I just want to say a shout out, because I'm sure all the other ones have done the same, but Peter has inspired such a generation of people to actually achieve and do the best that they can, and you constantly boost our self-esteem, which is the thing that enables us to go out there and try and achieve what we can.
Thank you.
And this is not just patting on the back, but I do think about it. You know, one of the big things with an electric bike is offsetting or getting rid of your local trips in the car, especially. And I do remember, I don't know what the lecture was, but when I was studying cities, and they're talking about how much you could do just by changing your local trips.
Yeah.
How much, and that's a thing I talk about regularly. So it's
You told us.
that's right.
I promise that the next few, in fact, no one any ever more, will be one of my students who feels the need to say this about their former teacher. But yeah, look, thanks everyone, and we will have another one, but not next Thursday. We've got a break next Thursday, but I'll let you know about what's coming up after that. So thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon, Jane and Giles.
I look forward to it.